Did you know? James Cameron originally developed a script for a potential Spider-Man film in the 90s. However, Sony ultimately decided not to use Cameron's ideas nor hire him as a director, despite him pursuing the project for quite some time. Cameron's Spider-Man film would have been drastically different from Sam Raimi's trilogy. First off, Cameron's film would have been R-rated due to its language and violence, with Peter Parker cursing at thugs and the man who killed Uncle Ben. Cameron also talked about Peter Parker's transformation from a scrawny teenager to a full-blown superhero as being like Kafka's The Metamorphosis, a 1915 novella about a traveling salesman transforming into a massive, insect-like creature. Cameron also preferred Peter Parker to have organic web shooters rather than it being mechanical, which Sam Raimi and scriptwriter David Koepp kept. This was because Raimi believed that audiences wouldn't be able to accept Peter Parker building mechanical shooters from scratch. The main villains in Cameron's version would have been both Electro and Sandman. David Koepp made Green Goblin the antagonist instead, mainly because Sam Raimi felt that the strange father-son relationship between Norman Osborn and Peter Parker would make for a more interesting movie. Dr. Octopus was also planned for the first Raimi film as a side villain, but was removed to streamline the film. But he made Dr. Octopus the villain in the sequel 2 years later. Spider-Man ultimately had 4 contributing writers, and 3 of them, James Cameron included, voluntarily relinquished all credit to Koepp. Raimi was officially hired in January 2000, and his passion for comic books ultimately earned him the job. Before Raimi, however, Sony was seriously considering David Fincher for the director's chair. Fincher didn't want to do an origin story, and instead wanted to adapt the Night Gwen Stacy Died story arc. Fincher told IO9, "I was never interested in the Genesis story. I couldn't get past a guy getting bit by a red and blue spider. It was just a problem. It was not something that I felt I could do straight-faced. I wanted to start with Gwen Stacy and the Green Goblin, and I wanted to kill Gwen Stacy." Fincher wanted to have a darker and more grounded take on the Marvel hero, but Sony disagreed. Fincher also wanted to solve the origin story issue by making an interesting opening sequence. The title sequence would have been a 10-minute music video that went through the entire Peter Parker origin story, and the movie would start with Peter meeting Gwen Stacy. The face of the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, Tobey Maguire, was far from the studio's first choice for the role. Colin Farrell, Ewan McGregor, Scott Speedman, Wes Bentley, and the late Heath Ledger were all scouted for the part, but Raimi wanted Maguire. Raimi eventually got his way after Maguire had some promising screen tests. Hugh Jackman was cast as Wolverine in the late 1990s, with the first X-Men film releasing in 2000. At the time, both Fox, who owned the X-Men franchise, and Sony agreed to work together and make a small cinematic universe of sorts before Marvel started theirs. Hugh Jackman was originally supposed to do a cameo as Wolverine in the first Spider-Man movie, but a small issue with his costume prevented that from ever happening. Jackman told the Huffington Post, "In the first Spider-Man, we really tried to get me to come on and do something, whether it was a gag or just to walk through the shot or something. The problem was, we couldn't find the suit. The suit was stuck in something, and so when they were there in New York when I was there, we couldn't get it together." Raimi was set to direct a 4th Spider-Man movie scheduled for a 2011 release. The movie would have had James Vanderbilt as a writer, and its villains would have included Mysterio and the Vulture. The script went through several revisions, but Raimi wasn't satisfied with how it was turning out. This was also planned to be the first entry in a whole new trilogy of films. However, Raimi eventually threw in the towel and gave Sony his blessing to do a reboot instead. Although the project was scrapped, Vanderbilt was kept on to write for The Amazing Spider-Man. Although The Amazing Spider-Man movies disappointed some, the first movie was one of the highest-grossing reboots of all time. Sony even intended The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to launch an expansive film universe to compete with Marvel's Cinematic Universe. In 2013, Sony announced a 3rd Amazing Spider-Man film with a release date of June 10, 2016. They also announced a 4th film slated for May 4, 2018, with extended universe films featuring the Sinister Six and Venom. However, the series' future became unclear when Amazing Spider-Man 2 had the lowest box office performance in the franchise. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 was delayed to an unspecified date in 2018, and the 4th movie was moved to an unknown date. Following the 2014 Sony hack, the company was revealed to be in talks to have Sam Raimi return and direct a new trilogy, and were in contact with Marvel about including Spider-Man and Captain America: Civil War. Marvel was reportedly unhappy with Sony's desire to retain the Spider-Man film rights, and talks with both Raimi and Marvel fell through. However, Sony and Marvel later announced that a new Spider-Man would appear in Captain America: Civil War, and that Sony would be making Spider-Man: Homecoming, produced by Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal. Writers Jonathan Goldstein and John Daly were given 3 days to present Marvel with a pitch for Homecoming's screenplay, and confirmed shortly after that they got the gig. The duo proposed a completely different take on Spider-Man, opting to focus on the high school aspects of Peter Parker and a realistic approach to what a young person might do if they had superpowers. Goldstein and Daly believed the past films in the franchise focused on drama, tragedy, and the origins of Spider-Man, and wanted to avoid treading the same ground. They even made a list of elements that were repeated in previous films and tried to avoid using them in Homecoming. Daly saw the film as an origin story of Spider-Man finding his place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Goldstein saw it as a film about Peter Parker coming to terms with his abilities and confronting real fears as he grows and improves his powers. The writers also wanted to avoid skyscrapers to make Homecoming stand out visually, and instead wrote in locations such as Queens, the Staten Island Ferry, and Washington, D.C. Instead of aiming for a modern feel in Homecoming, director John Watts wanted to give the film an 80s vibe. To achieve this, Watts told the cast to watch movies such as Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Back to the Future. Star Tom Holland tried emulating Back to the Future specifically, and told Yahoo Movies that he wanted to be his generation's Marty McFly.
But you know what she's like. If she finds out people try and kill me every single night, she's not gonna let me do this anymore.
In April 2016, Michael Keaton was slated to play a villain in Homecoming, but dropped out of talks due to scheduling conflicts with his role in The Founder. Talks began again after scheduling for The Founder was restructured, and Keaton sealed the deal. The cast of Homecoming come from all walks of life, which wasn't accidental. Watts said that he wanted the cast to reflect how diverse Queens is in real life, and Kevin Feige said he wished everyone recognized themselves in every portion of the Marvel Universe. Keeping the film grounded also had the side effect of keeping the film's budget relatively low. In fact, Homecoming has the smallest budget of any recent Spider-Man film, besides the original 2002 Sam Raimi movie. And if you want more Spider-Man facts, you can check out this Did You Know Gaming Extra video on a Spider-Man Easter egg. And for those of you that are disappointed that Wolverine didn't make it into the Spider-Man movies, at least Magneto made it into this Spider-Man video, in his own little way. Check it out.